we need to set up the nature of truth. I have to make sure you have some comprehension of what truth is, because the reason discussions about moral issues are so difficult is that people really aren't clear about what makes something true. And it turns out truth is quite easy. Truth is very easy. There's a picture that we all hold, a picture that most of us accept. And most of you believe when you leave this room, the chairs don't pop out of existence, right? I don't know, does anyone think that they do? We all believe they continue to exist, that we don't construct the world, that the world is not beholden to how we think or feel, that we have to deal with the world in the way it comes to us, that we can't make the world different automatically just by thinking or feeling a certain way about it. I can't cause my greatest enemy to die by defining death as the death of my greatest enemy. I can't cause him to cease to exist just by feeling a certain way about him, right? There is this world of objective things, objects that exist independently of our thoughts or attitudes toward them. So this is what we're saying. The world consists by and large of mind-independent objects that exist and have the characteristics they do independently of how we think or feel about them. So my believing something isn't enough to completely change reality. That would be nice. Then I would be the architect of my own world. So when some people say, well, God exists for me, but he may not exist for you, it sounds like they're saying God exists because I believe that he exists. And if that's the case, you're God. God depends on you. That's not the way belief works. We don't bring things into existence just by believing certain things. So we've got this reality, what exists, what is real. As human beings, we have this ability to represent features of the world with beliefs. You've got lots of beliefs. You've got perhaps a potentially infinite number of beliefs. How do I know? Well, do you believe that 2 is greater than 1? Yes. Do you believe that 3 is greater than 1? Yes. Do you believe that 4? You can see where we're going. You've got lots of beliefs. And the point of beliefs is that they represent the world as being one way as opposed to another. This thing represents nothing. It just is. But beliefs attempt to map on to the world, to accurately reflect the world. When you believe something, that's what you're committed to. This idea that this belief holds up to reality, that it matches up with it. When you have a belief matching up, we call it true. So here's truth. A belief is true when it corresponds to some fact or state of affairs. That's it. We're good. That's what truth is. It's when you have some belief that corresponds to some fact. So think of beliefs like a camera phone. When you go on vacation and you're taking pictures with your phone, those pictures aren't your vacation, right? They're representations of your vacation. And what does a good phone do? Well, you can take the picture and line it up with reality and see that they correspond with one another. If your camera, every time you take a picture, changes the heads on your friends who are with you on vacation, that's not a good camera. Because we want a camera that matches up with reality, right? It's an accurate camera. It's a good one. So think of a good belief as a good camera. A good camera corresponds to reality. A true belief corresponds to reality. So what makes it true? My belief. What makes my belief true that there are people in this room? This isn't a tough question. There are people in this room. That's it. The very fact that there are people in this room makes my belief true that there are people in this room, right? My belief matches up with the fact. Beliefs are kind of like maps. If you're a climber and you buy some map of the terrain and it's a bad map, it's not going to match up with the terrain, right? We want a map that we can kind of place over the terrain and everything lines up. A bad map doesn't. a good map does. Your beliefs are like maps. They're mapping out the world. The only question is, are they doing a good job or a bad job? They're doing a good job when they correspond to reality. They're doing a bad job when they don't. So a belief is true when it corresponds to some fact. Beliefs are what sort of represent things. Facts are what exist. We're using the word fact in a slightly different way, and so I'll probably go between fact and state of affairs. State of affairs might be better. When you're in a science class and they juxtapose facts and theories, usually what they're saying is facts are the things that we've proven, and theories are the things that we haven't proven. We're using the word fact just to denote what exists, what is real, regardless of whether we know it or not. The world is just made up of a whole bunch of facts. Our job is to discover them. Maybe state of affairs would be better. So a belief is true when it corresponds to some state of affairs, the way things truly are. So why is it that we struggle so much with truth? It's because we confuse truth with something else, with knowledge. Notice what our definition did not say. It did not say a belief or statement is true when it corresponds to some state of affairs, and you know that it does. It did not say a belief or statement is true when it corresponds to some state of affairs, and everyone agrees that it does. It did not say a belief is true when it corresponds to some state of affairs, and you can prove it. None of that. A belief is true when it corresponds to the way the world is, regardless of whether you know it or not. You agree with me on that, because you think that people discover truths, that there are truths already out there, that there can be a truth, and yet we don't know what it is yet. And that's the point of, what we do, especially here at a university, is trying to uncover truths. So notice, truth has nothing to do with whether you know that you're right, with whether you can prove that you're right, or with whether everyone agrees that you're right. It has nothing to do with those things. In other words, truth is not a respecter of persons. So this is the way I've taken to putting it. Maybe this will help. I hope this doesn't confuse you even more. Truth is like God in that way. It's not a respecter of persons. That is, whether what you believe is true has nothing whatsoever to do with you. Neither why you believe it or how you came to believe it has anything to do with truth and whether what you believe is true. So suppose I believe that God exists because I've got all these reasons I can give. My belief is true, just in case God exists. Suppose later I give up all those arguments and I come to believe that God exists because I read it in a fortune cookie. Does my belief turn from true to false simply because my reasons changed? No. It's still true, right? It's still a true belief. It has nothing to do with me. So that means you could be the most virtuous person in the world, and someone could be the most vicious person in the world, and you could both have lots of true beliefs. Because truth isn't a respecter of persons. It doesn't care about who's doing the representing. It just wants the representation to be correct. A statement is true when it corresponds to some state of affairs, the way things are. Even lucky guesses can be true, right? If that's possible, clearly it doesn't matter for truth who has the belief. If you can guess and get at truth, then truth doesn't care about you or where your belief is coming from. All it cares about is whether a belief matches up with the way the world is. And you can get lots of true beliefs if you want. Believe anything and everything. You'll get lots of true beliefs, right? You'll get lots of false ones too. And usually we like to have a good ratio. But if you want true beliefs, and lots of them, believe everything. You'll get lots of truths. You'll also sweep up a lot of falsehoods, but hey, you still got truth. Why? Because some of those beliefs will correspond to some fact. Truth is not a respecter of persons. Neither are arguments. Arguments are not respecters of persons. This is what you learn in a logic class. Whether an argument is a good one has nothing to do with the person giving the argument. Nothing. Arguments are good or bad based on the relationship between the premises, the reasons, and the conclusion, not on the basis of who happens to be giving the argument at the time. So look at this argument. Everything that begins to exist has a cause. That's the first premise. Premise 2, the universe began to exist. Conclusion, thus the universe has a cause. Is this a good or bad argument? Logically speaking, this is a fantastic argument. Logically speaking, this argument's impeccable. If the premises are true, the conclusion's got to be true. But does that change based on who happens to be reading the argument at the time?